This has been The Space Story, a weekly space and aeronautics report brought to you by this station and NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration.
Special report number 222, coming in 3, 2, 1.
25 seconds and counting on Apollo 13 is go. 10.
On the 25th anniversary of the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, NASA presents a look back at Apollo 13. Highlights coming up.
0. We have commit and we have liftoff at 2:13.
Standby for S4B to COI capability.
S4B to COI, Roger.
Roger, you've got it now, Jim.
We've got S4B to COI.
Standby. Houston, we've had a problem here. Say again, please.
Houston, we've had a problem.
56 hours into the flight and 200,000 miles from Earth, Command Module Pilot Jack Swigert gave the first indication of serious trouble for Apollo 13. This report to the ground began the most gripping episode in man's venture into space. Launched successfully on April 11, 1970, Apollo was progressing smoothly to a planned lunar landing until a failure occurred in the service module cryogenic oxygen system, which resulted in other multiple failures. The men in Mission Control began emergency procedures that grew into an effort by hundreds of ground controllers and thousands of technicians and scientists to solve the most complex and urgent problem yet encountered in spaceflight. In a recent telephone interview, we asked former astronaut Jim Lovell, commander on Apollo 13, to describe the first few moments of the emergency.
At about 60 hours after we had taken off, Fred Haise and I went into the lunar module, which was attached to the command module at this time, and examined the interior of the lunar module. And just as we finished the examination, coming back to the tunnel to the command module, we heard an explosion. We didn't know what it was. However, light indications and the indications on the gauges and looking out the window scene of venting of a gas at a high rate of speed all indicated that we were losing all of our oxygen. We had two big oxygen tanks on board, and it appeared that one tank was completely empty and the other one was rapidly dissipating its supply. That also meant that once the oxygen was gone, all the fuel cells would die. Two of them already had died on us. And once we lost all of our main electrical power, we could not use the engine of the command module, the maneuvering engine, since it was gimbaled by electricity. And consequently, we were in deep trouble.
The oxygen tanks with companion cryogenic hydrogen tanks feed the three fuel cells that generate the spacecraft's electric current, provide breathing oxygen, and produce water.
At that time, we were not too sure just exactly how we'd get home, but we knew that we had to use an inner module to do it.
In spite of extensive training prior to the mission, the astronauts had not trained for multiple failures. Former astronaut Fred Haise was lunar module pilot on Apollo 13.
It was frankly extremely confusing because there were a large number of caution warning lights on that across all of them there was no common thread to understand why all the lights were on. For instance, we had control problems. We had reaction control valves that were shut, and in fact, Jack Swigert was having trouble controlling the command modules as far as jet that shut off. And I had fuel cell lights, and of course, it was one of these things later when you analyze it in a lot of time. The common thread was the explosion had jarred the vehicles enough that some valves had been clamped shut in a number of systems. They were spring-loaded and required electric excitation to move them normally, but the G-shock of the explosion overcame the spring, made them change position. So that was why things went across a lot of systems, even though the main problem was the loss of oxygen. I
Step by step, following instructions from the ground, Haise and Lovell powered up Aquarius, the lunar module which was to be used as a lifeboat. Weigert powered down Odyssey, the command module, to save its batteries, oxygen, and cooling water, in hopes they could ultimately be used for re-entering and landing. Again, Fred Haise explained.
We powered up the LEM virtually in half the time it normally took in lunar orbit. The main reason we had to beat the command module dying, so to speak, was we needed its inertial platform alignment transferred to the LEM, because we had so much debris around us. Looking out the windows, we couldn't tell stars, what were real stars. There were so many little sparkly things out there that they completely obliterated seeing a star field. And that's normally what we have to depend on to align a platform. So the reason we needed a platform was we were on a trajectory or a path that would have not gotten us back to Earth. So we desperately needed to make one maneuver, one engine burn with the LEM to get us back in the right direction. Without that platform alignment, we would have probably not been able to do that.
Apollo 13 was the first and only mission in which an entirely new last-minute flight plan had to be developed and voiced to the astronauts from mission control.
That was an abort or a survival case, call it that. And we had no flight plan that covered, in truth, on board, or a book that covered anything that we did thereafter. So we took our normal flight plan and, in essence, threw it away. So from there on, it was a very sporadic game of catch-up, primarily with the effort that was done on the ground. They managed to keep one step ahead of the next problem. They work out procedures, and in some cases, even ran them on the ground in simulations or in chambers, actually, to test them before they sent us up the instructions.
Physical hardships grew by the hour within the spacecraft. Again, Jim Lovell explained.
First of all, most of the heat generated or used in the spacecraft comes from the electrical system. We did turn on the electrical system in the lunar module with the battery powered, but with all the electrical systems turned off the command module, the temperature in the combined craft started to fall. As a matter of fact, it kept getting lower and lower during the entire trip home until just prior to re-entry into the atmosphere, it was down to about 38 degrees Fahrenheit, about the temperature of your refrigerator. We had some other problems too that had to be overcome. In the command module were canisters of lithium hydroxide used to take out the carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, or really was generated, of course, by the exhalation of our breathing. In the lunar module, we had also canisters, but they were round, to fit into the round holes of the lunar module system, whereas the command module canisters were square. We did not have enough round canisters to get home safely, and we noticed that the portion of the atmosphere consisting of carbon dioxide was building up, and since we let this condition exist or continue, we would be poisoned by our own exhalation. So, combined effort by the ground crew in devising how to jury rig a square canister from the command module into the lunar module system was accomplished, and we were able to get over that milestone. We had other problems too, of course. We had a battery that, what we called outcast, had a small explosion. As we lost that lunar module battery, things were a bit different, because we need electrical power to get home, and we have run out without no control of the spacecraft.
The 40-degree temperature inside the vehicle made it extremely difficult for the astronauts to get some sleep.
We had a lot to do, and sleep became only secondary. We realized, though, that the 3 or 4 days necessary to get home, that we had to get some sleep. Actually, as it turned out, that I slept about an hour and 40 on the way home. One curious thing about the spacecraft, though, as the temperature got colder, when we tried to go to sleep, if we did not move, the body temperature would heat up the air around us, and since there was no convection in 0 degrees, the warm air just stayed around our body and acted as a blanket, protecting us somewhat from the colder atmosphere inside the spacecraft.
Getting the astronauts home safely was a cooperative effort between both the ground and the flight crew. Jim Lovell described some of the highlights.
The ground determined it by going around the moon, using it as a device to swing us back towards the Earth, and then using the attitude rockets of the lunar module and the descent engine of the lunar module to modify our trajectory. We could probably get home quickly. The ground gave us the parameters of which to maneuver the spacecraft with the descent engine to make the first maneuver to get back on what we call a pre-return course, which would get us around the moon and get us back towards the Earth. Because the flying was done from the lunar module, with the Jet Command module attached, we had to learn to actually fly all over again because the center of gravity was shifted so much that when we maneuvered with a control handle, if we, for instance, if we decided to pitch down, the spacecraft might go up or sideways or anyway, and we had to literally learn to fly all over again. It took some time to learn. As we run around the moon, we determined that we would probably run out of consumables, oxygen, electrical power, and water before we got home. Actually, we had plenty of oxygen to go all the way home, but it was electrical power and water that we were worried about. And about 2 hours after we got around the backside of the moon, the ground again called up to us, gave us the various parameters to light the engine for a second time, the descent engine for a second time, keeping off for about 6 minutes. Just pushed us faster and faster and faster towards home so that we could enter the atmosphere prior to running out of electrical power. That maneuver went off in fine shape, but just after it was completed, we shut off everything that was consuming electricity to prevent us from running out before we got home.
By the time Apollo 13 entered Earth's gravitational field, still 216,277 miles from home, the data showed it would miss by 99 miles and sail on into orbit forever. A bigger mid-course correction than ever made before by a returning Apollo lunar mission was done. The spacecraft was positioned by sighting on the Earth in front, a procedure never used previously. The engine was fired manually. Lovell and Haise, in their normal lunar module piloting positions, handled the attitude control. Swigert, sitting on the ascent engine cover, watched the timer to signal when to start and stop the burn, and Lovell pushed the button.
Odyssey Houston, we show you on the main. It really looks great.
An extremely loud applause here in Mission Control.
On April 17th, more than 40 million Americans watched their TV screens as Apollo 13 splashed down in the Pacific Ocean. Messages poured into the United States from more than 100 countries expressing their pleasure at the safe return. President Nixon presented the Medal of Freedom to the three astronauts and summarized the reaction of many when he said, "The three astronauts did not reach the moon, but they reached the hearts of millions of people in America and the world." Jim Lovell believes that Apollo 13 was beneficial to the overall space program.
First of all, it showed that even with the closest scrutiny of the manufacturing of equipment, that things can go wrong. Actually, the accident was man-made 5 years before the vehicle took off, and they put a wrong thermostat into the oxygen tank. And it gave an awareness to people how important it is to be very, very careful in quality control and design of the equipment. It also, I believe, gave a sense of satisfaction, a sense of accomplishment to NASA and all the people connected with the program and the flight crew, that facing a catastrophe like Apollo 13, that there was the depth of technical talent, the depth of equipment design that would allow us to turn the catastrophe into what I've always termed as successful failure. But certainly, the return of 13 should be a monument to the thousands of people who, on the ground, who looked at the procedures to get us back home, who actually designed and other equipment that got us back home. Facing a almost catastrophic situation from 200,000 miles out in space, about managing to turn that catastrophe into a successful return. I think those are the lessons that we learned from the Apollo 13 and that NASA has applied in the future program that it does.
We have a report from the Iwo Jima that Apollo 13 at a distance of 4 miles from the ship. The smoke you see is getting of RCS propellant.
NASA, the National Aeronautics and Space Administration, has presented a look back at Apollo 13.